My sister abandoned her kids with me and disappeared. When I called the cops, my mom screamed, "You're tearing this family apart." Then my dad snapped, "We raised you better than to betray blood." That night, a stranger knocked, whispering, "You're not the first she's done this to." At 38 years old, I was comfortable in my routine. Wake up, work as an HVAC technician in Austin, Texas, grab dinner on the way home, maybe a few beers, sleep, repeat. My life wasn't exciting, but it was steady. No surprises, no complications, and definitely no kids. But that changed the night my sister, Melissa, showed up at my door, dumping her 2 children on me and vanishing into the night. And that was only the beginning. It was a Wednesday night, and I was exhausted. I had just come home after a long day crawling through attics, fixing broken AC units in the Texas heat. My shirt was sticking to my back, my arms were sore, and I was looking forward to nothing more than a beer and a quiet night in. I had just sat down, cracked open a cold one, and grabbed my leftover brisket from the fridge when I heard it, a knock at the door. 9:43 p.m. Who the hell was knocking at this hour? I put my plate down and walked over, pulling the door open. And there she was, Melissa. She stood on my porch, looking thin, jittery, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, eyes darting around like she expected someone to jump out of the bushes. She had a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, and in front of her, standing on my damn porch in pajamas, were 2 little kids. A girl, Ava, 8 years old. A boy, Leo, 5. My niece and nephew. Melissa forced a tight smile. "Hey, Max." I blinked. "Melissa? What the hell?" My eyes dropped to the kids, who stood silent, wide-eyed, clutching each other's hands. "What's going on?" "I need a favor." I sighed, rubbing my face. I knew that tone. It was the same one she used every time she needed money, a place to crash, or someone to clean up the mess she made. "What kind of favor?" I asked. She glanced over her shoulder. The street behind her was empty. No car, no Uber, just a dark, quiet road. "I need you to watch the kids," she said quickly. "Just for a few days." My stomach dropped. A few days with Melissa could mean anything. A weekend, a month, maybe more. I folded my arms. "Melissa, no. I have work. I can't just—" "Please, Max," she whispered. She looked desperate now, shifting on her feet like she was trying not to cry. "I don't have anywhere else to take them." I looked down at the kids. Ava held on to Leo's hand like he was the only thing keeping her steady. Something was off. "Where's your car?" I asked, eyes narrowing. Melissa hesitated. "I got dropped off." "By who?" I stared at her. "Melissa. What's going on?" She bit her lip. "It's complicated." That was not an answer. I sighed, already feeling the weight of responsibility sinking into my shoulders. "Fine. One night. One. You come back in the morning." She nodded quickly. "Yeah, of course. Thank you." She knelt down, kissed both kids on the forehead, and whispered something to Ava. Then she turned and, without another word, walked down the street and disappeared into the dark. She didn't even look back. By morning, my gut told me she wasn't coming back. I dropped Ava off at school and took Leo to daycare, trying to act normal, pretending like this wasn't a complete disaster. By lunchtime, no call, no text. By that evening, nothing. By the next morning, I knew. Melissa had dumped them on me, and she wasn't coming back. I sat in my truck outside the daycare, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. What the hell was I supposed to do? My phone buzzed. It was my mom. "Max," she said the second I picked up. "Melissa told me you have the kids." I closed my eyes, exhaling sharply. "Yeah, she left them here. She just needs time," Mom said quickly. Too quickly. "She'll be back." "When?" I asked, gripping the phone. "Because she's not answering my calls." "And she didn't leave them with clothes, Mom." "Nothing." Silence. Then she sighed. "Max, listen. Don't make this worse. You need to be patient." "Patient," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "She abandoned them. She's their mother," Mom snapped. "She's doing her best." Was she? Because from where I stood, she ran and left me holding the bag. And I knew what was coming next. I had to call the cops. When the officer arrived, I gave my statement. They asked for Melissa's details, any known addresses, if she had a history of drug use. I told them the truth. I had no idea where she was. As soon as the officer left, my phone exploded with calls. First was Mom. "Max," she snapped. "What the hell did you do?" I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Mom, you called the police on your own sister," she hissed. "She abandoned her kids," I shot back. "What was I supposed to do?" "She'll come back. You're making things worse." Then Dad called. "We raised you better than this," he growled. "You don't betray blood." I clenched my jaw. "She's the one who left her kids, Dad. Not me. They're family," he snapped. "You handle family problems inside the family." I was done. I hung up, my blood boiling. Then, at 10:13 p.m., another knock at the door. I wasn't expecting company. "You're not the first she's done this to." I opened it. A man stood there. Mid-40s, graying hair, sharp eyes. "You Max?" he asked. "Yeah." He exhaled. "Name's Joel Barker. I need to talk to you." I narrowed my eyes. "About what?" "Melissa." My stomach tightened. What about her? He looked tired, worn. She's done this before. My breath caught. What? Joel nodded. She left 2 kids with me. 3 years ago. Said she'd be back in a few days. He chuckled bitterly. Never come back. I stared. She's running from something, Max, he said, voice low. And I think it's worse than you realize. My blood ran cold. Joel glanced down the street, then back at me. There are people looking for her, he murmured. And trust me, you don't want them knocking on your door next. Joel stood there, waiting. His face was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something serious. I swallowed hard. What do you mean? People are looking for her. Joel sighed, glancing down the street like he expected someone to be watching. Can I come in? I hesitated. I didn't know this guy, but something about him. I don't know. Maybe it was exhaustion or the weight of having 2 kids sleeping in my house who weren't supposed to be my problem, but I stepped aside. He walked in, looking around. My place wasn't much, just a small 2-bedroom house in South Austin, not far from my job. Clean enough, but nothing fancy. Joel sat down at my kitchen table, rubbing his jaw. I crossed my arms. Started talking. He took a deep breath. I met Melissa 5 years ago. We were together for a little over a year. His mouth tightened. During that time, we had 2 kids. My stomach twisted. She never told me she had other kids. She doesn't tell anyone, Joel muttered. That's the thing about your sister. She knows how to disappear. I sat down across from him, gripping the edge of the table. So what happened? Joel let out a bitter laugh. One day, she just left. I came home, and the kids were sitting in the living room, waiting for her to come back. He shook his head. She never did. A cold chill crawled up my spine. How old? I asked. He swallowed hard. Cold is 6. Sophia is 4. I exhaled sharply. Jesus. That meant she had at least 4 kids. Ava, Leo, Colt, and Sophia. And God knew if there were more. Joel leaned forward. She doesn't just abandon them, Max. She runs. She burns every bridge, changes her name, and disappears. That's why I spent years trying to track her down. I rubbed my hands over my face. Why now? Why show up at my door? Joel hesitated. Then, in a low voice, he said, because she's in trouble. I didn't like the way he said it. What kind of trouble? I asked. He shook his head. Not sure, but it's bad. The last time I heard from her, she was living in Dallas. I went up there to try to find her, but she was already gone. He exhaled sharply. I talked to a guy who used to date her. He said she owed money. A lot of money. I frowned. To who? Joel's face darkened. The wrong people. The air felt heavy. I stood up, pacing the kitchen. This didn't make sense. Yeah, Melissa was irresponsible, but she wasn't the type to get involved with criminals. Was she? I thought about the way she looked when she showed up. Nervous. Jumpy. Looking over her shoulder. I stopped pacing. What kind of money? Joel rubbed his jaw. He wouldn't say, but it was enough that she ran without looking back. I felt sick. Jesus Christ, I muttered. Joel leaned back. She's done this before, Max. She gets in over her head, she runs, and she dumps the kids on the closest person she can find. I clenched my fists, and now she's dumped them on me. Silence. I looked down the hall, toward Ava and Leo's bedroom. Those kids had no idea what kind of disaster they were caught in. Joel's voice softened. Listen, I don't know what she got herself into this time, but if people are looking for her, they might come looking for you too. I barely slept that night. I kept my phone next to me, half expecting Melissa to finally call, or for some stranger to knock on my door at 3 a.m. looking for her. Neither happened. Instead, at 6:27 a.m., I woke up to my phone buzzing. An unknown number. I sat up, heart pounding. I didn't recognize the area code. I answered. Hello. Silence. Then a voice, low and cold. Where is she? A shiver ran down my spine. Who is this? I asked. You know who. I glanced at Ava and Leo's door, my throat tightening. I don't know where she is. A long pause. Then, in an eerily calm voice, the man said, she stole from us. That means now you owe. My mouth went dry. I don't have anything to do with this, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Doesn't matter. Family pays. A chill crawled up my spine. Then, before I could respond, the line went dead. I sat there, gripping the phone, my heart hammering in my chest. I wasn't built for this. I was just a guy who fixed air conditioners. I wasn't supposed to be dealing with loan sharks or criminals. But now I was in deep. I forced myself to take a breath. One step at a time. First, the kids. I had to make sure they were safe. I stood up, walked down the hall, and cracked the door open. Ava and Leo were curled up together in the bed, still fast asleep, completely unaware of the storm outside. I closed the door and walked back to the kitchen, where Joel was already making coffee. He gave me a look. You look like you saw a ghost. I sat down heavily. They called me. Joel's face hardened. What did they say? That I owe. Joel let out a long breath. Crap. I rubbed my hands over my face. What the hell am I supposed to do? Joel was silent for a moment. Then he said, we need to find Melissa before they find us. I looked up at him, and for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I realized I didn't have a choice. Melissa had pulled me into her mess, and now it was a race against time. I stared at Joel, my mind racing. Find Melissa before they find us. That sounded like some movie line, except this wasn't a movie. It was my life, and it was unraveling fast. I took a shaky breath. How the hell are we supposed to find her? She could be anywhere. Joel nodded, drumming his fingers on the table. She's good at disappearing, yeah. But do people like her? They have patterns. I frowned. Patterns? She's got nowhere to go, right? He said. She doesn't have a steady job. No family that'll take her in. I scoffed. My parents would roll out the red carpet for her. Joel raised an eyebrow. Maybe, but she didn't go to them. That shut me up. He had a point. Melissa knew our parents would defend her to their last breath. If she was in trouble, why not hide with them? Because they weren't safe, either. Melissa wasn't just running from responsibility. She was running from something dangerous. Okay, I said. Where do we start? Joel pulled out his phone. I still have an old contact in Dallas. A guy named Ricky Cruz. If Melissa was in trouble up there, Ricky might have heard something. I exhaled sharply. You think she's still in Dallas? Joel shook his head. No, but if we know why she ran, maybe we can figure out where she's going next. Before we did anything, I had to take care of Ava and Leo. They woke up while Joel was making another pot of coffee. Ava rubbed her eyes and wandered into the kitchen, still in her Batman pajamas, while Leo trailed behind her, dragging a stuffed dinosaur by its tail. She looked at Joel, then at me. Who's that? This is Joel, I said, keeping my voice light. He's, a friend of your mom's. Joel gave her a small nod. Hey, kiddo. Ava didn't say anything. She just stared at him. Then she turned back to me. Is Mom coming back today? My stomach twisted. I forced a smile. Not yet, sweetheart. But we're gonna figure out where she is, okay? Ava's expression didn't change. She knew. I don't know how, but she knew her mom wasn't coming back anytime soon. She climbed up onto one of the kitchen chairs, pulling her knees to her chest. Leo, still too young to understand, just sat on the floor with his dinosaur, humming to himself. I glanced at Joel, then back at Ava. Hey, did your mom tell you where she was going? Ava hesitated. I leaned forward. It's okay, kiddo. You're not in trouble. She looked down at the table. She said she had to fix something. My chest tightened. Did she say what? Ava shook her head. She just said, if someone comes looking for her, we should say we don't know anything. Joel and I exchanged a look. She told you that? Joel asked gently. Ava nodded. My hands curled into fists. Melissa knew she was in deep crap. So deep that she was preparing her 8-year-old daughter to lie for her. Anything else? I asked. Ava bit her lip. She was on the phone a lot before we left. She was mad. She said someone stole from her, but she stole it first. My heart dropped. Joel sat up straighter. She stole something? Ava nodded. She said they were going to be mad and that we had to leave fast. I felt sick. Melissa wasn't just in trouble. She was in danger. And because she dumped the kids on me, so was I. Joel and I stepped outside while Ava and Leo ate breakfast. I needed air. She stole from them. I muttered. Jesus Christ. Joel ran a hand through his hair. This is worse than I thought. We stood there in silence, the Texas sun already burning against my skin. Then Joel said, we need to go to Dallas. I blinked at him. Now. The longer we wait, the worse this gets. I exhaled sharply. He wasn't wrong. But there was one problem, the kids. I can't just leave Ava and Leo here, I said. Joel nodded slowly. Do you trust anyone? I did. One person. Jess. Calling Jess, and I have been friends for over 10 years. We met back when I did contract work for an HVAC company she managed. We weren't together, never had been, but she was one of the few people I could count on. I called her. Max, she answered. It's 7 in the morning. What's up? I hesitated. I need a favor. A pause. Then, in a knowing tone, she said, Melissa? Yeah. She sighed. What happened? I told her. The whole thing. By the time I was done, Jess was fuming. That selfish little. She stopped herself, exhaling sharply. All right. Bring the kids over. They can stay with me while you go to Dallas. Relief flooded me. You sure? Of course. But Max, be careful. If Melissa stole from the wrong people, this could get dangerous. I clenched my jaw. Yeah, I know. Ava was quiet the whole drive to Jess's house. When we pulled up, she turned to me. You're going to find Mom? I hesitated. Then I said, I'm going to find out what happened. Ava looked out the window. She's not coming back, is she? I gripped the steering wheel. I don't know. She nodded like she already knew the answer. Leo was too little to understand. He just giggled when Jess opened the door and ran straight to her dog, a big golden retriever named Boone. Jess knelt down to Ava's level. Hey, kiddo. Ava gave a small smile. Jess glanced up at me. Go. We'll be fine. I exhaled. Thanks, Jess. She nodded. Just don't get yourself killed. I forced a chuckle. No promises. Joel and I hit the highway toward Dallas. The plan was simple. Find Ricky Cruz. Figure out what Melissa stole. Get ahead of whoever was looking for her. We drove in silence for a while. Then Joel spoke. Have you ever done anything like this before? I laughed dryly. Like what? Hunt down my runaway sister while dodging criminals? No, can't say I have. Joel smirked. Welcome to the club. I shook my head, gripping the wheel. You really think Ricky will talk? Joel exhaled. He will if he knows what's good for him. I didn't like the way he said that. I stared at the road ahead, my mind racing. I had no idea what I was walking into. But one thing was clear. I wasn't just dealing with Melissa's mess anymore. I was in it now, and there was no turning back. The drive to Dallas was just under 3 hours, but it felt a hell of a lot longer. Joel sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, while I kept my hands locked on the wheel, my thoughts racing. What the hell were we walking into? Melissa was deep in something. Ava's words kept playing in my head. Mom said someone stole from her, but she stole it first. That meant she wasn't just on the run. Someone was coming for her. And by leaving her kids with me, she'd practically put a target on my back. Ricky Cruz, I said, breaking the silence. Tell me about him. Joel exhaled. Used to run small-time hustles in Oak Cliff. He's got connections. Not exactly dangerous, but he knows people who are. I gripped the wheel tighter. And you think Melissa crossed one of those people? Wouldn't be the first time. The highway stretched out ahead of us, endless and empty. I had a bad feeling about this. By the time we rolled into Oak Cliff, the sun was beating down hard. This part of Dallas had changed over the years. Some areas were cleaned up, gentrified, but Ricky Cruz's neighborhood? Still rough. Joel guided me to a rundown auto shop on the edge of a strip mall. The kind of place with a faded sign, busted up cars in the lot, and a dude out front smoking a cigarette like he had nowhere better to be. This is it? I asked. Joel nodded. Yeah, Ricky owns the shop. But don't let that fool you. This is just a front. Great. Just what I wanted to hear. We stepped out of the truck, the heat slapping me in the face. As we approached, the guy out front, a stocky dude in a tank top covered in grease stains, looked us over. Help you? He asked. Joel smirked. We're looking for Ricky. The guy exhaled smoke through his nose. Who's asking? Joel leaned in slightly. Tell him it's Barker. That name meant something. The guy's posture changed just slightly, but I caught it. He flicked his cigarette, turned toward the shop, and disappeared inside. I gave Joel a look. What exactly is your history with Ricky? Joel shrugged. We used to do business. I didn't like the sound of that. A minute later, the shop door opened, and a thin man in his 40s stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. Ricky Cruz. His eyes landed on Joel, and a slow grin spread across his face. Barker, thought you were dead. Joel smirked. Not yet. Ricky nodded toward me. And this? Family business, Joel said smoothly. Ricky's grin faded. Melissa, that confirmed it. He knew. Yeah, I said. We need to talk. Ricky led us into his office. A cramped back room filled with car parts, stacks of papers, and the smell of motor oil and old coffee. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. I haven't seen Melissa in months. I folded my arms. But you know what she did? Ricky studied me for a moment, then sighed. Yeah, I know. He glanced at Joel. Your girl got greedy. Thought she could outsmart people who don't take kindly to being played. My stomach twisted. Who? Ricky hesitated. Then he said, a guy named Carlos Vega. Joel stiffened. Jesus Christ. That was not a name I wanted to hear. I turned to Joel. Who the hell is Carlos Vega? Joel rubbed his jaw. Let's just say, he's not the kind of guy you screw over and live to talk about it. Ricky nodded. Vega runs money drops across Dallas and Houston. Melissa was working one of his operations, moving cash between locations. I blinked. Melissa was working for a criminal? Joel muttered. She always did know how to pick him. Ricky continued. Problem is, your sister got too bold. Vega was moving a lot of money. Melissa decided to skim a little off the top. Joel groaned. How much? Ricky met his eyes. Then he said 50 grand. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. $50,000? That wasn't a little off the top. That was a death sentence. I ran a hand over my face. Jesus. And she thought she could just get away with it. Ricky smirked. She almost did. Vega didn't notice at first. She was careful. But then she got cocky, took another 20. That's when he started looking. 70 grand. My sister stole 70 grand from a criminal. No wonder she ran. No wonder someone called me, telling me I owed. Joel leaned forward. Where's Vega now? Ricky shrugged. Still in Dallas. Looking for her. Pissed as hell. I felt sick. Melissa had burned me without a second thought. And now I had a goddamn debt hanging over my head, one I didn't know, but one that wouldn't go away. Ricky tapped his fingers against the desk. Listen, if Vega's guys called you, you don't have much time. They don't make THR-OTS. They make examples. I clenched my jaw. So what do we do? Ricky sighed. If I were you, I'd disappear. Take the kids, leave town, and don't look back. I stared at him. That's not an option. Joel leaned back in his chair. Then you've got one choice. I already knew what he was going to say. Find Melissa? I muttered. Joel nodded. Before they do. Ricky shook his head. That's a dangerous game, man. You really think you're going to find her before Vega does? I didn't know, but I had to try. I stood up. Where's the last place she was seen? Ricky hesitated. Then he exhaled. Rumor is she was hiding out near Fort Worth. She's got an ex up there. Guy named Trey Morales. Joel frowned. Morales? That guy's a psychopath. I swallowed hard. Great. Ricky stood up. If you go looking for her, be careful. Vega's men are everywhere. If they catch wind that you're sniffing around, they'll come for you next. I nodded, my heart pounding. I had one shot at this. Find Melissa, fix her mess, and keep the kids safe. Before it was too late. The ride to Fort Worth was tense. Joel kept drumming his fingers against the dashboard, staring out the window like he expected Vega's guys to pull up beside us any second. I wasn't far behind him in paranoia. Melissa had screwed up badly, and now we were running out of time. I clenched the wheel. You really think this Trey Morales guy is hiding her? Joel exhaled. Melissa always had a way of finding the worst kind of men to latch onto. I didn't doubt it. But if she was still with Trey, she was either desperate, reckless, or both. We were about to find out. We rolled up to Trey Morales' place around 6 p.m., a rundown duplex on the outskirts of Fort Worth. The kind of place where nobody asks questions and cops only show up when they have to. Joel pulled his gun from the glove box, checked the clip, and tucked it into the back of his waistband. I raised an eyebrow. Are you planning on using that? He smirked. Only if I have to. I didn't love that answer, but I wasn't exactly in a position to argue. We walked up to the door, and before I could knock, bang, bang, bang. Joel pounded his fist against it. A voice, gruff, irritated, came from inside. Who the hell is banging on my door? A second later, the door swung open, and there he was. Trey Morales, mid-40s, tatted up, a scar running from his left eyebrow to his cheek. He had trouble written all over him. He squinted at us. Who the hell are you? Joel smirked. Old friends of Melissa's. Trey tensed. That was all the confirmation we needed. She's not here, he said quickly. I call his bluff. That's funny, because I'm pretty sure she's standing behind you. His jaw clenched, but he didn't move. Then, from inside, a familiar voice. Max? And there she was. Melissa. She stepped forward, arms crossed over her chest. She looked pale, worn out, dark circles under her eyes. I clenched my fists. You've got a lot of explaining to do. Melissa let out a sharp breath. I know how this looks, but I stepped forward. You dumped your kids on me. You stole 70 grand from a criminal. And now his guys are calling me, saying I owe. She swallowed hard. I didn't mean for it to. I cut her off. Save it. Joel crossed his arms. Do you have the money? She hesitated. That was enough of an answer. I ran a hand over my face. Jesus, Melissa. She bit her lip. I thought if I could just get far enough away, maybe. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah? And what about Ava and Leo? Were they supposed to just figure it out? Melissa looked down. Guilty. Trey, who had been suspiciously quiet, suddenly spoke up. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. If she's got to go, she's got to go. Joel raised an eyebrow. Are you turning her in that quickly? Trey shrugged. She didn't tell me she stole from Vega. I ain't dying for her. Melissa whipped around to him. Are you serious right now? You said you'd help me. Trey scoffed. Help you? You lied to me. If Vega finds out you're here, guess whose door they're kicking down first? Melissa looked panicked now. For the first time, she really understood just how screwed she was. I took a deep breath. All right, here's what's going to happen. Melissa blinked at me. What? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You're going to call Vega's guys. She visibly paled. Are you out of your? Shut up and listen, I snapped. You're going to tell them you want to make a deal. You don't have all the money, but you've got a way to get it. Melissa frowned. What kind of deal? I smirked. We're going to set them up. It was an easy plan, but it was the only one that had a chance of getting us out of this. Melissa made the call, voice shaking. I want to fix this. I can get half the money today. The guy on the other end didn't bite at first, but greed is a powerful thing. When they agreed to meet, Joel and I got into position. We set up hidden cameras in Trey's garage where the deal would go down. A buddy of Joel's, who worked in law enforcement, was ready to step in once we got enough on tape. The plan was simple. Melissa would lure Vega's guys in. They'd admit, on camera, that Vega's business was dirty. Joel's guy would make sure the footage ended up with the right people. If it worked, Vega would have bigger problems than chasing Melissa down. That night, Vega's guys arrived. 3 of them. They walked into the garage like they owned the place, eyeing Melissa like she was already dead. You got her money, one of them sneered. Melissa nodded, playing her part. I have half. The rest is coming. Not how this works, sweetheart. Another guy smirked. Vega wants it all. Joel, hiding behind a stack of tires, watched through the hidden cameras we set up. Then, the magic words came. You think Vega gives a crap about the cops? One of them laughed. We got half the department in our pocket. Boom. Gotcha. The second that was on tape, Joel's guy sent the footage out. Within hours, law enforcement swooped in. Vega's guys were arrested. More importantly, Vega himself was now a very public target. Nobody in his world could trust him now. Melissa, somehow, was off the hook. The next morning, I found Melissa sitting outside Trey's house, staring at the pavement. She looked up when I stepped outside. So, what happens now? I crossed my arms. That's up to you. She swallowed. I know I screwed up. Yeah, I said. You did. A pause. Then I said, you're signing over custody of Ava and Leo. Her eyes widened. What? You heard me. I said. I've already talked to a lawyer. You're giving me full custody. No half measures. No visits when you feel like it. You sign them over, or I call Vegas guys and tell them where to find you. Melissa's mouth opened, then shut. She knew I wasn't bluffing. After a long moment, she nodded. Okay. 3 months later, Ava and Leo were legally mine. Melissa? She took off again. This time, I didn't care. My parents still weren't speaking to me. Said I turned my back on family. I didn't care about that, either. Ava and Leo were safe. They had a home, stability. And Melissa? She got exactly what she deserved. A one-way ticket out of our lives. And honestly, that was the best revenge of all.